Warrior reps, good setters. Got me on the mic now, let's spill the tea. Talking courtside dreams from history. Legends on the blacktop now and then. From Will to Steph, we hit it again. Better chimes in, let's go deep. Young bloods rising, can't skip a beat. Puppy prospects with fire in their eyes. Draft night suckers and hoop dream highs. Wire to wire, bring the heat. Broadcast magic can't be beat. Do better, we're blow better. We're hoop heads, trendsetters.
What's poppin', y'all? It is your boy, it is Guard E3, and welcome to the 25th episode of the And One podcast. Well, 25th episode and 3 watch-alongs that were separate, but I would say we're on episode 25. It's a milestone episode, so we thank you, everybody, for all your support, everybody who's been supporting us. But, let me not waste any time. Let me go right into introducing, as I call him, the greatest co-host of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, Mo Better. Mo, how you doing today?
I'm doing great on a Thursday night, getting ready to talk some hoops with none other than my guy, Guard 3. So I am hyped. Welcome everybody out there listening to the podcast. Let's get into it.
No, absolutely. And you know how we start this? Underrated player of the week. So, what, Mo, do you got an underrated player of the week for us?
I do. I know everybody, we don't have any NBA action going on right now, but you know what? We can give people flowers when flowers are due. My underrated player is the quiet man himself, Al Horford of the Boston Celtics. Look, I think Al Horford has always been a terrific basketball player. All he does is put up numbers. He makes winning plays, 5-time All-Star. He made an All-NBA team, made an All-Defensive team, one of the best team defenders in the NBA to this day, and now he's an NBA champion. So I just want to give a big salute out to Al Horford of the Boston Celtics.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love watching Big Al, and I've always thought he was an underrated, piece of the Boston Celtics success.
Let me add one more thing, Brett. I think the amazing thing about Al Horford, too, is that the first 9 years of his career, Brett, the three-point shot wasn't part of his arsenal. He didn't shoot threes. And then at almost age 30, he started taking 4 threes a game. He added a 3 to his game. And I think that move, Brett, is what extended his career. It extended his value. Al Horford is a career 38% shooter from 3. I think that's amazing that he realized where the game was going, and he wanted to be able to up his value so he could contend with some of the young bucks coming up. And that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Al Horford was a guy you could tell he's one of those guys that thought he was always going to have a longer career just because of his ability to also play make at the center position. But him adding just volume 3-point shooting from the center position, man can play as long as he wants to now. He has a skill set that will just age beautifully. So I'm hoping we got many more years of Big Al, and I'm glad he's back this year. I really thought he was going to go out on top, but he decided we're going to run it back one more year.
Why not? He's greedy. He's trying to get another one.
Yeah, well, not if my Bucks have anything to say about it, right? Am I right?
Right.
I'll say, got an underrated player of the week for us this week. We, everybody wants to talk about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, and rightfully so. But I think we're forgetting there's some other really phenomenal rookies in this class. And that's what I wanted to talk about, right? One of the other phenomenal rookies. And the one I had in mind is Rickea Jackson. I wanted to pull this up because I thought it was a lot of fun to see. Shout out to Gabe Leftbrain on Twitter. He's the guy who makes these fun little graphs. We're talking about somebody who's been an absolute bucket. I believe, if I remember correctly, she's averaging like 15 or 17 a game. She's up there. She can create her own shots just like the best of them. And with the way she commands the offense, she almost looks like a seasoned pro out there at times. So, and she's also just elite so far from all 3 levels. This is a girl who can shoot 38% from 3. And if you watch her, that just completely opens up her game at the rim.
That's crazy. I just saw that stat. That's amazing.
Yeah, say sure. Her jump shooting just terrifies people and just pulls them all the way out. And once that happens, it's just open season for her at the rim. So Paige Buckets, Rakia, and Cam Brink will be a big three. That'd be a terrifying big three.
Oh, I like that, Cottrell. I like the idea. I like that a lot.
And it's great because these are three ladies who I think all three skill sets complement each other perfectly too, and that's the scariest kind of big three. Cam Brink was somebody I loved watching before she unfortunately went down with injury. Her defense was legit game changing. So overall, this is my underrated player of the week, Rakia Jackson. Love talking about Reese and Clark, but wanted to show some love to another rookie in this year's class.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. She's amazing. I'm still getting off on that because her jump shot is so thorough, but she's finishing at the rim at 72%. That means that she's just as amazing going to the paint as she is on the perimeter. So yeah, I'm very impressed. I'm glad somebody's giving her flowers.
I'll say, yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you, Cottrell, for hopping into the comment section. Definitely appreciate you, sir.
No doubt.
Now, Mo, there are some topics that we covered, last week, but you unfortunately weren't able to make it. But I kept them in here because I needed to see your reaction to some of these because I think these are some generational bad takes. And I want to see your reaction to this one.
Sure.
We're going to start off with Rasheed Wallace believes that Wizards MJ is more dangerous than Bulls MJ. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I just think that, and I'm a huge Rasheed Wallace fan. I just think sometimes Sheed might be hitting the weed harder than he needs to. Look, that's just a silly take on any level. Even a casual fan, even a casual knows Wizards Jordan is not better than Bulls Jordan. I don't know if Wizards Jordan is much better than Paul Pierce on the Nets. It wasn't great. It wasn't great. I mean, Mike's an all-time great. I'm not hating. He was a good player on the Wizards. He was, you could use the term actually, an all-star caliber player, but Bulls Jordan was the best player in the game. Wizards Jordan was a guy that could make the all-star team, but at no time did you ever feel that Wizards Jordan was not just, he wasn't the best player. He wasn't one of the 10 best players in the NBA. Look, I love Sheed. It's a horrible take. Wizards Jordan, it's just a bad take. Let's move on. That was old Jordan, and he looked old.
No, this past week has given me so much ammunition for everybody that tells me, former NBA players know more ball. And it's takes like this that make me think do they? They played the game and they were great at it, but do they? It's like Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett also went on just I don't know if I want to call it a hot streak, but he also went on a generational run. The one that got me is, of course, I was up in arms about this one right away. He says he's not sure if Giannis is top 3. And that doesn't sound like you think Jokic, Embiid, Luka, you're starting to think that might not be the worst take ever until you realize the rest of the quote is he might not be top 3 in the East. Because at first he's like, you can't pick Giannis to be better than Tatum and Embiid. And he goes, what? Giannis is the 4th best player in the East?
I think Giannis is one of the 3 best players. Look, he's either 1 or 2 in the East, and arguably he's still in that top 4 range, overall. Obviously, we're looking at Luka and Joker. Embiid gets a lot of credit and a lot of love. Look, I even go as far as, is Embiid more skilled than Giannis? Yeah. Who do you trust more, Embiid or Giannis? Giannis. It's not even close. So I don't think it's a horrible take, but it's not great. It's not great. All I know is if we're judging you on your production, if we're judging you on winning, well, Giannis already has a title. He already has a Finals MVP. And I'll give Tatum credit. His team just won the title. he still don't have a Finals MVP. He don't have a regular season MVP. I believe Giannis has 3 of those. So let's fall back a little bit on trying to water down Giannis. I think Giannis is still right up there at the top of the heap. I want to give a lot of shout out to the other guys that stepping the game up. Brunson has done really well. You can see what Donovan Mitchell can do, but would I rank Donovan Mitchell ahead of Giannis? No. Would I rank Brunson ahead of Giannis? Nope. I know a lot of people love Halliburton. I do as well, but I think he can only play one style. I certainly wouldn't rank him over Giannis. I'm not taking Embiid over Giannis. Right now, you know what? Giannis is at the top of the heap in the Eastern Conference. His team might not be wearing the crown, but I still think he's the beast in the East.
I think a lot of people just mistaken sometimes just almost accolades for being the best player. It's like Tatum wins the ring, so he's the best player. That isn't always the case when it comes to people winning a championship. Heck, not everybody who wins an MVP is the best player in the league that year.
I'm glad you said that.
More narrative award.
I'm glad you said that.
Right. There's like multiple years where you can look at the MVP and go, are they the best player in the league? And the answer is no. It's not. Doesn't make them any less deserving of an MVP.
I just had this argument. I know we get sidetracked on different NBA topics, but I had this argument today. They were talking about, Derrick Rose has an MVP. We were talking about small athletic point guards. And he was like, remember when Derrick Rose was the best player in the NBA? And I was like, well, he was never the best player in the NBA. And he said, he won the MVP. Remember that year he won the MVP? I was like, yeah, he won the MVP. He wasn't the best player in the NBA. Last time I checked, LeBron was still the best player in the NBA. Kobe was still in the NBA. Derrick Rose was terrific. He was exciting. He was explosive. He was a lot of things. He was not the best player in the NBA at any point in his career. Taking nothing away from D Rose. Love the guy. Wasn't the best player.
I would almost, yeah, that's fair. And I've even people make arguments for Dwight Howard, 2011 MVP, and Dwight was phenomenal that year. I wouldn't make that argument.
I wouldn't either.
But it just shows to me that's why I try to break people off into tiers, like MVP caliber tiers. And like I said, I like Derrick Rose, but yeah, he was, I think at best, he was the third best player in the NBA.
And he was terrific. Look, I feel like too many times with the MVP, it's this player had a career year. Let's acknowledge that career year. And I'm like, you can have a career year for you. I don't know if that makes you the best player in the NBA. What if you want to make a case for D Rose when he did win it, Brett? I believe the Bulls that year won 61 games. So I believe they had the best record in the East for sure, maybe the best record in the league. So you could do that argument, best player on the best team argument, if you want to go that route. But no one actually thought he was the out and out best player in basketball. That title was still either LeBron James, Kobe was still playing at an elite level. So it definitely wasn't Derrick Rose.
Right. And I say, and we can go back and find even more cases just to show that this isn't just Derrick Rose.
Right. I'm not killing Derrick Rose. I'm a fan.
I don't think in 2005, Steve Nash was the best player in the NBA either, but he was also very deserving of the MVP. He had a great case for it.
Wait a minute. Is that the year that Shaq said he got robbed?
Yeah.
Whatever year was the first year Shaq was in Miami, Shaq swore he got robbed. Was that year?
Yeah.
Because go back and look at Shaq's numbers. Shaq, you didn't get robbed. You had a good bounce back year, but 23 and 10, you're not getting MVP for that, man. You shouldn't have been MVP. You didn't get robbed. You didn't get credit for having a bounce back year, but I wouldn't have gave Shaq no MVP. That would have been literally giving Shaq the MVP. If you're not a fan of Steve Nash, and I'm sure he has his share of haters, I want to remind you that particular year, Amari Stoudemire, gone for the year, gone. What do? He plugs in Boris Diaw in Stoudemire's spot, and they don't miss a beat because he makes Boris Diaw look like an all-star caliber player. I'm sorry. There would have been a better case for the first MVP that he won that Kobe should have won. The second one, I actually think he earned that because damn sure Shaq didn't earn it. If the argument that Shaq got robbed, then you didn't look at the season, you didn't look at the numbers.
Yeah, it's funny because I've seen Shaq mention the 0506 one too, saying that he should have won it and he got robbed, and I found that hilarious because I'm like looking at the top 10 in MVP voting right now.
Right.
Shaq's not even on here.
Well, I mean,
Kobe,
look, I
Kobe's
didn't even
fourth.
know that, but I saw the season.
No, absolutely. Like looking at what the voters saw, it's interesting to me to look at like the top. I don't take too much stock into top 10 MVP voting, but it's kind of interesting to see some of the names on here. Like at number 7, Elton Brand.
Well,
Like that, I
there
never.
you go. There you go, Brett. Shaq should have an issue with that Elton Brand was ranked ahead of him. Now he can have an issue with that.
Yeah. No, but yes, Kobe is 4th. Ooh, Kobe 4. That's crazy.
Now he should have a problem.
Yeah, I think the top 3 probably should have been Nash, LeBron, Kobe that year.
And I would have been fine with that. I'm there. I'm with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And did you hear about Kevin Garnett's other comment?
Which one was this? Because he's made a lot.
About Phoenix Suns.
What did he say?
We should fear the Phoenix Suns because his first half of this take is actually fine. When Durant and like Booker are both, can be top 10 players, and it's like I can see the argument there. And then the second half is where this goes off the rails. He goes, Booker could be an MVP candidate. I'm like, I'm not sure, but okay. And then he goes, Bradley Beal could be an MVP candidate. And I'm like, Beal?
See?
Pump the brakes, KG.
Yeah. See, there you go. There you go. He got greedy. He started off with a realistic take somewhat, and then he goes, Bradley Beal can be an MVP candidate. Not the NBA. Maybe overseas, maybe in Europe, but not in the NBA. Bradley Beal is on the other side of his peak. And at his peak, he was no MVP candidate. At no time was Bradley Beal an MVP candidate. You know why? Because he's not a winning player. He's a talented player, but he's not a winning player. And usually when you're recognized as an MVP candidate, it means you're the guy. You're the guy. So your team's success or lack thereof has a lot to do with you. Well, when Bradley Beal was the guy with the Wizards, what they were, consistently bad.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm sitting here like, there's no way you just said that. There's no way you watched the Suns last year and said, yeah, Bradley Beal. And you can even watch him on the Wizards and go, yeah, there's just no way. Like, I'm making, like I said, trying to get to like top 100 players before the season starts. And I'm really hard pressed to figure out if Bradley Beal's going to make it on that list next year.
He'll probably make it. Look, top 100. Yeah, he'll make it. Look, I'm not saying he's not talented, but Zach LaVine is talented, Brett. But right now, Chicago can't give Zach LaVine away. So but he's talented. He's talented. In what capacity? Because right now, what we said last year in Phoenix, we said Bradley Beal as a third option is probably his best spot. But he wasn't great as a third option. He wasn't that great as a third option. They weren't good as a unit, period. And I think the 3 best players, they do a lot of things that are very similar because all 3 of them primarily attack from the mid-range. While even though we know Durant can shoot the 3 effectively, we know Book can shoot the 3 effectively. They're not both dominant over the top 3-point shooters who shoot volume 3s. I don't like the chemistry of the 3. That's just my thing, but I digress. I think KD thinks because he probably plays with Phoenix in 2K and they're really good in 2K and he probably won the championship with them. That doesn't really translate to real life. We've got to get off of that. Look, I don't know who's going to win the title this year. That's as honest as I can get, but I do know who won't win the title. It won't be the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. At this point, I'm convinced that Bradley Beal, and I know it's not going to happen because that would require $50 million coming off the bench. But Bradley Beal is a 6 man. At this point, I'm convinced that has to be the spot for him. Bradley Beal was not great as the third option. My issue with Bradley Beal as the third option, and this is something I was concerned about before the year started, playmaking. He doesn't really like a lot of your great third options have this great balance of scoring and playmaking and are great at getting others involved. See like Chris Middleton all these like last year. He's phenomenal. He's been phenomenal at that. Third option, even Chris Bosh could swing the ball around. Guys like Kevin Love could swing the ball around and score. Bradley Beal just pure volume scorer. And I don't think that's necessarily what most teams need as a third option. And like you said, especially with the Suns, who already have two scorers. They already have two scores. They need a defender and kind of like a playmaker in that, third best player spot. And Bradley Beal just isn't that. So I'm almost starting to think that if you took Beal and put him on the bench and let him lead the bench squad without Booker and Durant on the court, that's probably what he'd be best at this point.
I actually think that's a great idea, by the way. I know they're going to say, you don't put nobody that makes that kind of money. We're not putting him on the bench. You're saying come off the bench as a sixth man, because he could come off the bench as a sixth man, still get his minutes. He's still going to play 35 plus minutes a night, so he can still get his numbers if that's the issue. I think guys have bigger egos than that. A guy like Bradley Beal would probably lose his mind at the idea of him coming off the bench. If the coach was smart, you go ahead and start him, and then maybe 3 or 4 minutes into the game, Bradley, you need your rest. But really what it is we're just setting him up so he can come back with the bench unit. And I think he can be strong leading a second unit. And then in a finishing, closing lineup with the starters, I think that could work as well. But correct me if I'm wrong. Did the Suns not go out? Did they get Tyus Jones?
They did.
I think Tyus Jones, look, he doesn't have a lot of shine to his game, but he's just a good basketball player. And if they let Tyus Jones do what he does well, I think he can run that offense. I think he can get guys in their sets, not to mention when needed, he can get a bucket. So the idea that they have Tyus Jones, that makes the idea of swinging Beal and putting Beal as the first guy off the bench, that makes even more sense to me.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's what I was thinking. Like, I love Tyus Jones coming in at the 1. I think when it comes to that 4 spot, I'm predicting right now probably the best lineup that you're going to get from the Phoenix Suns is going to be Tyus Jones. You're going to run Devin Booker. Then I think you add in Royce O'Neal to give you some more size and defense next to KD and Nurkic. I feel like that's going to be their best lineup this year. And
no, I like that lineup.
And I feel like with Beal too, like that would change the whole perception of him too. Like his ego might say you can't come off the bench, but proving to just everybody that you're willing to do whatever it takes to win. And let's be real, Bradley Beal could very easily come off the bench and win 6th man of the year.
Easily. And how many 6 men? We always talk about 6 men. We always talk about 6 men that can give you 16 or 20 a night. Bradley Beal is the kind of 6 man that can give you 20 to 25 a night. I'm not sure the Suns team is thinking that way, but I think if you want to balance out what your top heavy starting 5 already does, I think that's the best way to get more value and more firepower off your bench. Because last year, when those guys went to the bench, they didn't have any kind of firepower coming off the bench. They had nothing. You can start Royce O'Neal. I would start Royce O'Neal too. I like that lineup. And I like the idea that if you come off the bench with Bradley Beal and Grayson Allen, that's firepower coming off the bench. Your second unit would be amongst the best second units, if not the best second units in basketball.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love the idea, but the question is, I guess, will they actually do it? Will ownership let him do it? Because I feel like Coach Bud would. But I feel like it's going to be ownership, the one that's going to be like, yeah, we're paying this guy too much now. And the Will Beal do it. There's just so mmany factors that makes this whole thing interesting, honestly.
I'm going to say no because it makes too much sense. So it's not going to happen. And that's fine. Look, if you want to go that route, not listen, that Bradley Beal will be in the starting lineup along with KD and Booker. My guess is Book is basically going to play the 3, and we'll see how it works out. Like I said, you can almost be too top heavy at some point, because when you have that many scores in your starting lineup, I know people can make your they can spread you out, but these aren't guys who are like, usually when they can spread you out, you've got 2 scores to give you 25 or more, and the other guys give you 16 or 18. You've got guys that multiple guys that are volume scorers to me to agree. Now KD doesn't really take 20 shots a game, but I think Bradley Beal, he's good for putting up 20 shots a game. Book's going to put up 20 or more shots a game. Like, I just think that you can balance out your depth and your firepower with Beal coming off the bench. But I digress, because we both know it's a move that probably will never happen.
And of course, the one more thing I wanted to get your opinion on, Mo, is it's not only the old heads that are losing their minds a little bit. I think Anthony Edwards might be too, because he came out, made this comment. Michael Jordan was the only player with real skill back in the day. And here's the part that kills me. If you start off with your statement with, I didn't watch it back in the day, so I can't speak on it, you probably shouldn't finish the sentence after that. Like, if you ended it there, everyone would be like, oh, we didn't watch, old school ball, whatever. But this is such a terrible take for me, and I'm just like, dude, because now we're discrediting, guys like Penny, even Mark Price. How about even forwards like Derek Coleman? Like, they're really talented and skilled 90s players.
Right. So obviously he doesn't know what he's talking about. And the statement that he said, that tells me that he parrots what somebody else said. He literally gets his information from what someone else said, because obviously he also admitted he didn't even watch back then. Well, if you didn't watch back then you couldn't know what Kevin Johnson could do, what Baron Davis could do as a small athletic point guard, or somebody like Steve Francis, the franchise. What about Grant Hill before his injuries? Grant Hill was breaking down Pippen or Jordan in ISO. Don't tell me there wasn't talented guys back then. That's just not that's not factual. You forget Chris Mullin, Latrell Sprewell. Come on, Mitch Richmond. It's a weak comment. It's interesting because he's a professional basketball player, a great talent who could one day be at the top of the heap. But he doesn't actually know the game like that to make that kind of comment. That doesn't make any sense. Like, you don't know no history of your game at all. No history. Chris Webber, none of those kind of guys, no skill. Rod Strickland. I could go on and on. Look, if I go back further, if you knew the game, then you would know the skill level of a guy like Rolando Blackman or Derek Coleman, like you put out there. I think there's no shortage of skill. What Chris and I touched on a little bit on the morning show today was this, that when you say that today, the average player in the NBA today, the average player is more skilled. They're more well conditioned. They're probably more athletic. I don't disagree with any of those statements because the game has evolved differently. But if you start separate the average players from the special players, not Joe Regular, but your star players. A lot of today's great players, Brett, and I'm sure you would agree with me on this, is they're not ultra incredible athletes. They're not, but they're incredibly skilled and polished with super high basketball IQs. So the game has evolved in different ways, but the special players, I think the truly gifted special players can play in any era. You're not going to tell me that Klay Thompson is in better shape or a better shooter than or more better condition than Ray Allen and Reggie Miller if they have the same opportunities playing in the same league. You're not going to tell me that. And they're different players anyway. It goes into a deeper discussion, also how the game is played, and we've gone over that many times. I feel like basketball, and I talked about this with Gene, I think Chris and I have talked about this. It's the one major sport where they don't give the guys that came before them flowers. They don't admire the guys from different era. They tear them down. In football, all we do is talk about the greats. We talk about guys from the 60s and 70s. Look, I never saw Johnny Unitas play, but nobody denigrates him or brings him down. Jim Brown to this day, is either one or two as the all-time greatest running back in football. Never saw the man play. I've seen old highlights and they're impressive as hell, but I never saw him play. But nobody tears down when Jim Brown played or calls him a lesser player. In baseball, Brett, they still talk about Babe Ruth, right? I'm just saying, only in the NBA they go like, well, those guys back there, they weren't that skilled, they weren't that good. I just think it's a lack of respect for the guys that came before you. If you want to say to me, Mo, not every player from every era could play in today's NBA. You are 100% correct. But you can't tell me that there aren't some transcendent, talented players from different eras that couldn't play in today's game. I don't think today's game, they've made it harder for natural scorers to score. I think they've made it easier for scorers to score. The gifted people who shined in one-on-one situations with this kind of spacing and movement, they wouldn't shine in one-on-one situations. Of course they would. Of course they would. So while I respect where the game is at, while I acknowledge some of the truly great players that we have in today's basketball, maybe Magic Johnson's response, Brett, was the best response. I don't respond to people that haven't won anything. That's pretty good. And maybe my response was much more long-winded, but maybe from now on I'll just parrot Magic and go, well, he never won anything, so he don't know nothing. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and when people talk about, the players back in the day being less skilled, I always question, because we always talk about, three-pointers now and at the rim and footwork. I almost question, like, are the players now more skilled, or are the players back in the day also just as skilled but just focused on different things? Like, Karl Anthony Towns wouldn't have focused on a three-point shot if he played in the 90s. He'd been more in the post. So we're talking about a completely different Karl Anthony Towns. We talk about someone like, Klay Thompson would, destroy like the 70s and like early 80s, and like, hey, they didn't shoot threes. So we're talking about Klay Thompson, the deep two merchant, because all they want him to do is shooting 20-footers.
He might get taken out of the game for taking all those deep twos, right? Because there was no three. We talked earlier into the game on the show, and what was I talking about? How Al Horford, almost 10 years into his career, learned to shoot the three. Well, if Al Horford played in the late 80s into the 90s, he would have still been a back to the basket, maybe shooting 10 or 12-foot jump shots, but he wouldn't have been taking threes because he would have been playing a different style of basketball. Look, if you watch the game was more of a grind. And I'm not disagreeing with what the commissioner and the powers that be did. They opened up the game. They opened up the floor to allow the truly gifted players to shine. I don't think that's a negative. I think it's great. But when you do that and you acknowledge what has happened, those same players can't turn around and go, well, I don't know why back in the 90s everybody didn't average around 20, 25 points. It was a different game, man. A completely different game. As explosive as Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose are, I would tell anybody, go look at a Baron Davis highlight reel. Go look at a Kevin Johnson highlight reel. Do the same things. And in some way do some things better, because Kevin Johnson shot better than any of them. The rest of them weren't really good shooters. They just weren't, flat out. I would argue, matter of fact, just for fun, if you pulled up Derrick Rose's MVP year stats and pulled up Russell Westbrook's same stats from that same year, they're damn near identical. But Russell Westbrook, he wasn't in the hunt to win the MVP. You know why? Because he played alongside Kevin Durant. And if Derrick Rose played alongside Kevin Durant, he wouldn't have won MVP either.
Just for fun, I'm actually pulling that up right now. 2011 Rose versus Rose.
Look at the numbers and look at the shooting percentages. When you know, you know.
It's always fun, and that's also a lot of things that people don't take into considerations. Like Russell Westbrook was like right up there too when it comes to talented. Like in 2011, he was also a phenomenal player in 2011. It's just One of them was like a 1A, 1B option, and Derrick Rose was able to pump in more shots because he was the clear 1A. Let's see, there we go. Okay. 2010, 2011. Let's see how close they were. Oh, it's there. That's right. Let's see, 2010, 2011. Okay. Okay, actually, yeah, no, they're very identical.
Yeah, I know.
Say, like everything is mega close. Derrick Rose scored 4 more points, but Russ had more rebounds, more assists, more steals. And Derrick Rose pretty much clears him in every other category: blocks, field goal, 3-point percentage, free throw. Like, but these are really close. Like, we're talking like 3-point percentage. It's different by 0.2 of a point. Field goal percentage, 0.3 of a point.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. That's all I'm not, again, this isn't, he's not a fan of Derrick Rose. No, I'm a fan of Derrick Rose. And I wasn't one of those people that said Derrick Rose shouldn't have been MVP. I was happy for him becoming the youngest MVP. I did not complain about that. I complained when I had conversation with friends, and I'm sure you had these kind of conversations where I was like, I have no problem with D Rose being MVP, but he's not the best player in the league, man. Like, those are two different things. Being in, like, when Karl Malone won back-to-back MVPs, he was never the best player in the league. He just won MVP back-to-back. He wasn't the best player in the league at no time in his career.
We're not going to start the Karl Malone better than MJ discourse.
No, we're not doing that. And look, when Steve Nash, I thought when Steve Nash won the second one, I thought he was more deserving. I did. I would have made, if people have a controversy, you can make the controversy about the first MVP, because I thought Kobe should have won that year. But the second year, if the second year, what he did with that Suns team, minus Stoudemire, as if he was never there, that was even more impressive. I think Steve Nash, maybe he gets hate, Brett, because in the bigger picture, did he win a title? No, he didn't win a title. I get that. I totally get that. But a lot of great players, by the way, that are in the Hall of Fame that we admire and love and talk about all the time, they didn't win titles. It happens. Not every great player is going to win a ring. If that were the case, every fan base would be smiling all the time because their favorite player, I'm sure there's Jim Kelly fans in Buffalo and Thurman Thomas fans, and they're wondering, man, if our guys, right. That's my point. Everybody can't win. It's tough to win titles in any sport. I'm one of those people that I look back and, man, if Derrick Rose had never got injured, where would his career be? But then I feel that way about a guy like Brandon Roy as well. I feel that way about T-Mac and Grant Hill. There's an endless list of what could have been. And as a sports fan, it's tough. It hurts, but you shake it off and you move on. I'm a huge Derrick Rose fan. I was really excited about him when in the second half of his career, when people wrote him off, and I was like, no, I think the guy can still play, but I think he's just going to have to play the basketball a different way. And he learned to play a different way. He became a better shooter. He didn't finish above the rim anymore, but he still finished. And I like the fact that he adjusted his game and he found a way to extend his career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of my favorite biggest what ifs, and it's kind of ironic because he's still playing, and when he plays is at a high level, but what if Kawhi Leonard didn't have a degenerative knee issue?
Wow.
Because I really think that you could have possibly booked him for another championship in these 4 years. Like, the Clippers made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals without him in 2021, and he was playing at an insane level before going down. So, like, I hate to say it, but maybe they beat the Bucks in the finals. I refuse to admit that, but it's a very real possibility.
That's fair. Look, if we're doing the if, and Kawhi is just, let's say he's as healthy as LeBron is, I think Kawhi Leonard wins at least one more title as the best player on the team. That he would have added at least one more title. And I'm not saying it would have been against your Bucks. Maybe it would have been another year, but a healthy Kawhi Leonard throughout an NBA season and playoffs, I think that would have changed a lot of guys the way their careers are, because I think he would have cut off a couple of people that went to NBA finals. So yeah, that would have changed a lot. Unfortunately, the Kawhi Leonard that we have does have a degenerative knee, along with a lot of other different injuries. And I know we were talking about how you deal with a Bradley Beal, even though he has a $50 million price tag. I think if the Clippers truly want to keep Kawhi Leonard and go forward, they have to adjust the way they play him. He has to me, he has to adjust to a different role. And I'm not talking about him as a role player, but I don't think he should do or carry the load of a one. I don't think he should do that anymore. I don't think he should play 35 plus minutes a game anymore. I think you take him down to about 30 minutes a game. And I think you can get the most value out of him. I'm not talking load management. I'm talking in-game management. Let's put it that way, in-game management. So in real time, he only plays 30, 28 minutes a game. You find a way to extend his career. And let's be honest, Brett, you and I, we don't think the current version of the Clippers are title contenders.
No.
We don't think, matter of fact, we're not sure the current version of the Clippers aren't play-in contenders at best.
No, I agree with that. Kawhi's injury history is just way too shaky. And if he's missing games, then you're pretty much counting on James Harden to revert back to like Houston Rockets James Harden to try to carry this offense.
Ouch.
And obviously, Houston Rockets James Harden was, what was it, 5 years ago at this point?
Yeah.
He's one of the greatest offensive players we've ever seen. And those that 2 year peak he had between like 17 and 19, absolutely incredible. The issue is it's 2024 and not 2017. So
now we have James Harden, point guard. That's about 17 points a night with 10 assists. By the way, 17 and 10 from your point guard, not bad. That's not bad at all. The problem is when you look at this Clippers team, this current version as a whole, they need somebody else to fill a void. They just lost about 24 points a game and 5 assists. And they need to find a way to replicate that. I don't know if they do it by committee, but if they can't replicate that, then for sure they're going to be a play-in team at best.
No, absolutely. Now, last week I did my top 20 players going into 2024, 2025. It's a predictive list, so you might look at this and go, well, that's not true right now. This is how I think the season's going to play out. And, throughout the year, I'll go back to this list. I'll see how close I was. Y'all can make fun of me if, Wemby starts off slow, and y'all can say, LMAO, this nerd had him at 7. So, I got a little ticker down here so you guys can get caught up. Overall, I don't think I did too bad. We had Jokic, Giannis, Luka.
I'll take that top 5.
SGA at 6, Steph Curry. 7, Victor Wembanyama.
I think Wemby blew me away. And by no means am I saying I didn't think Wemby might be a special player, but you think he's going to make the leap into the top 10, and I think that makes him even more special in year 2.
No, absolutely. It's a Hallie, Bron, Kawhi, Booker, Irving.
You know what? I know you and I talked about this a little bit. I think Halliburton is ranked too high. I think Halliburton only can play one style. And I think that until he shows that he wants to try to really be aggressive and be more of a scorer instead of just playing fast in the open court, I think he's a limited player to a degree. I wouldn't have him ranked that high. I know a lot of people think Halliburton's a superstar. I think Halliburton's an all-star. I don't think he's established himself as a superstar yet. I know we're quick to crown people that. He's not a superstar.
I got you. He's somebody I've been high on even since he was in, Sacramento before the trade.
No, I liked him too. I mean, I didn't get the trade because they could have made it work with him and De'Aaron because you could have played. Halliburton's a full 6'7". He could have you could have had just made him a combo guard and they could have made that work. But in the end, it ended up being a good move for both teams because Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox play well off of each other. It's going to be interesting going forward what they do because of the addition of DeRozan. But look, like I said, that trade, Halliburton for Sabonis, that was one of those rare trades that worked out for both teams.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the Pacers got the better player, but it definitely worked out well for both teams. I know Halliburton's kind of hard to judge because last year, first half of the year, he played like a top 10 player. He was absolutely phenomenal. Second half of the year, he got hurt, but tried to play through it. It kind of tanked his status quite a bit because he didn't look the same. It was like a tale of two halves. I think he gets even more efficient in the half court. And not only that, I think his defense actually was better than a lot of people thought. I'm not saying he's a great defender by any means, but I do think that he wasn't this massive negative. I think he was like a slight negative, and I think this year he's going to take a leap, become a neutral defender, mixed with what I think he's going to do in the half court. Say there's my top 11 player, and I could also be very wrong. He could just be the second half of the year Hallie, which I still think is top 20, but closer to 20 than 10.
No, I think he's an all-star player. I just think I don't know if he's made the top 10 or 11 yet. Like you said, it's your list. And we'll see. Look, he needs to add a couple things. If you're a 6'7" point guard, you might not like to do it, but you might want to get yourself a post game. Sometimes the game slows down and you've got a full 4 inches or more on the next guy. Get yourself a post game. Learn a couple of drop steps, even a little light jump hook in the paint. I think once he learns to attack with the intentions of scoring rather than attacking all the time and telegraphing that he's looking to pass, I think once he finds that balance, I think he'll make the leap to being a superstar. I think right now, though, he reminds me a lot of times when I watch them play, he's like Rondo at his peak, where you knew even when he was in the middle of the paint that he was looking to pass the whole time. And I think Halliburton's the same way. He's looking to pass, and I think he needs to balance himself out and make himself more of a scoring threat.
I'll say the one that I think that's going to make me look stupid on this list. There's one, and I thought about moving him up before the season even started. It's Ja. The man's coming off of 2 years of not playing basketball. I think this year he might be a little rusty. I think there might be some better players than him. It's nothing to do with how untalented or talented Ja Morant is. I just think he's missed 2 years. He's going to be rusty, and in that time, there's quite a few players that have just gotten better. So, to me, it's hard to gauge where he is right now to the rest of the league because of all that missed time.
Yeah, look, I get it. He's missed some time, and the list is a projection, right? It's not this is how it is. You're projecting this is what they're going to do. I think Ja Morant, provided he stays healthy, is going to push himself back into the top 10. I do. And look, I don't even know if De'Aaron Fox should be that far back. As I look at the list, do I think AD's that far down? Like, I wouldn't have Halliburton ahead of Anthony Davis. I don't think I'd have Kawhi ahead of Anthony Davis. Maybe Book, not Kyrie. He's a sidekick too. I don't know if he's any more important than Anthony Davis. It's tough. I get it because we're talking about the best of the best and they're all bunched together. And I think a lot of what you put down there, it literally is going to play out over the course of the season. If I was predicting, I think the one guy, again, this is barring injury, that's going to jump over a bunch of people. It's going to be Ja Morant.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. And I almost thought before posting this to the website of moving up Ja Morant real quick. But Anthony Davis, obviously, is going to come back with some phenomenal defense like he always does. Defensive Player of the Year caliber defense. He's going to come back with some seriously great finishing around the rim. I'm really concerned about the other aspects of his game because our guy from Hoops Temple pointed out, Aaron, his jumper is regressing hard, and it has been for the last couple of years. And people are talking about, like, Anthony Davis, if he can just find his three-point shot again. I'm watching Anthony Davis and looking at him, and I'm just like, if he could just consistently just start hitting his, like, 17-footers again, that'd be a huge boost. So,
kind of need him. No, go ahead.
No, I'll say I don't even think – I just want to see him consistently start hitting his jumpers again. I think he's been a bit inconsistent with that, not to mention he just – not really a great playmaker. Granted, playing with LeBron, you don't really need to be. But those are kind of the two areas that I question about Anthony Davis, and that's kind of why I just kind of left him probably maybe a little too low. I'm just a little bullish on him on a couple aspects of his game.
Look, I feel you. Look, the 3-point shot's not important to me. He had a couple of seasons when he shot it well, and he's had a couple of seasons where he struggled with it. But I am more concerned with him getting back to being consistent with his 16 to 18 foot jump shot, because when he's hitting his mid range, it expands his game. It opens up his game because he has a quickness advantage over Embiid, a quickness advantage over Joker. He pretty much every big man he faces that's not named Wemby, he has a quickness advantage over. Anthony Davis, to me, he's a good playmaker, but when you play with LeBron, I don't know if anybody's been a great playmaker, because that guy, he pounds the air out the ball. When you play with LeBron, there's usually one playmaker, and his name is LeBron.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So, if I look at this, yeah, I think Ja's gonna make me look stupid. That's the one name I'm kind of regretting putting a little too low. But might move that around. But let's get into 21 to 30, because I did jot down 9 more names, and we're going pretty fun with the first one. I think this dude's a phenomenal talent. He has an issue staying healthy, but he also showed us what he very well could be every time he plays. And not to mention, before he went out with an injury, he looked like one of the best players in the world in that play-in game. I'm talking about Zion Williamson. This is a guy, if he can stay healthy, and that's a big if, but I'm assuming that he does manage to hit 60 games this year. This is going to be his healthiest season yet. He could very well make me look stupid too. He's a great passer for his size. He's definitely improving in that area. He's a phenomenal finisher around the rim. Granted, he does have jump shot issues, and he's a great help side defender, but not necessarily a one-on-one defender. But overall, at 21, going Zion. I still believe in Zion Williamson.
I think Zion has all the potential in the world to be one of the top 10 players in basketball. He's kind of a one-off in his own right. Like, when I was having that debate about where we are, the current status of the NBA, and the person I was talking to was giving me that good old-fashioned default line of bigger, stronger, faster, and I was like, not really. There's a few anomalies that are unique. LeBron is a one-off. He's one of one. There are no two LeBrons. And the truth is, the closest thing to LeBron physically that we've seen in 20 years is Zion Williamson. He's the closest thing. And I'm with you. I think Zion has the chance to be special, but we always have to do the lead-in, Brett, if he can stay healthy, if he can sustain his conditioning. And he needs to develop a jump shot, because he doesn't shoot the ball well at all. And I don't mean a 3-point shot, just a jump shot that will make people respect that will open up his driving lanes, because he is a good playmaker as well. So I don't mind Zion at this spot at all.
Yeah, and honestly, even if he at least needs to become a willing jump shooter, even if it's not the greatest. And I always look to Giannis for that example. Is Giannis's jump shot great? No. But does he shoot enough and consistently enough and well enough from the mid-range that teams have to step out a little bit and respect him? Yeah, it opens up a world of possibility for him. Even him shooting like 35% from the mid-range, teams are still stepping out to try to, somewhat contest it, and that opens up a lot for him.
If the man ever I would hope, if I was a Bucks fan, I don't need Giannis to shoot threes. I don't. But if he can make a mid-range at any kind of consistency, it literally is lights out if he makes them. If 2 things Giannis could do that can alter the season right away: be a little bit more consistent from the mid-range and shoot 65% from the free throw line. Game over. That man's going to the free throw line 14, 15 times a game. If he shoots it at least 65% or better, it's over.
Fair enough. At 22, and this might be disrespectful to some, but I do think there are better basketball players than him. But I don't think there's a lot of people that have the motor and just clutch cheat and just I don't know, just for lack of a better term, I don't know a lot of people that have more of a dog in him than this guy. Going Jaylen Brown. He showed how amazing he is this past postseason during the regular season. I think he's a phenomenal basketball player, and he showed it. He's just versatile. Him and Jason Tatum are unique in which they can transform into whatever the Celtics need them to be. Scorers, defenders, like, and I love that. I think that versatility is highly underrated, and the fact that they not only have like two guys like that, but they have four guys that can really do that. And maybe even five and six. It depends on how versatile you think Kristaps Porzingis is, but at least Horford makes five. Like, that's just a unique team. I love Jaylen Brown, and I think there are better basketball players than him, but if we were ranking this on how much heart and how much, you put out on the court on any given night, man, probably might be number one in the league.
I think there are more talented players, more gifted players than Jaylen Brown. I don't think there's a whole lot of better players than Jaylen Brown. You can get caught up in flash and a behind the back move or tomahawk dunk. He's just a dog who just plays. I don't think when I watch Jaylen Brown compete, no matter who he's competing with, he's out of his element. That's the best way I can put it. I don't care if it's Luka or it's LeBron or even Giannis. I don't think he feels like he's out of his element, and that's the way he competes. He doesn't concede the fact, well, Jason Tatum's the best player in the Boston Celtics. Jaylen Brown's like, well, they say he's the best player in the Boston Celtics. I think I'm just as good, and he plays that way. If Tatum had Brown's dog, Tatum will be number one in your top 10. Yeah. That's how much dog he's got in him. So it's weird because there's a part of me that wants to rank Jaylen Brown higher, but I think that's a good spot for him. He's not. I don't think he's a superstar, but he's more than an all-star. I'll put it that way.
No, absolutely. I think the 21 guys they put over him, I think they're more impactful than him. But if you're asking but there might be quite a few of those players I wouldn't take over Jaylen Brown if I was building my own team.
Right.
And at number 23, I think we're getting a bounce back year, and I could be wrong on this one, but I'm willing to roll the dice. Damian Lillard. I don't think Dame time is quite done yet. I think his days of being a top 20 player in the league are over, but I still think he's in that top 25. And I think we started to see Dame finally click towards the end of last year. And even those first couple games in the playoffs before he injured his Achilles, he was going absolutely ballistic. Doc told us that he wasn't working out last summer. He came into camp out of shape. You can see this year, I think he comes in much better shape, and he plays closer to the Portland Dame. I don't think he's going to be able to fully recreate that, but I do think that the next year, Damian Lillard, we're going to get still a top 25 player in the league with the potential to move up, and he also has the potential to slide down a few spots because there's some guys behind him that are also going to be hungry.
So the way I approach where you rank Dame is this. If he plays to where he looks like Damian Lillard right before he left the Blazers, then the Bucks are going to be back in the conference finals getting ready to go to the finals. And if he does that, then we're going to be saying, along with a lot of other people, Dame's still a top 10 player. I think that if he's lesser than that, if he's not as good as he was last year and he's lesser than that, then I think it'll be one of the reasons why the Bucks don't go to the conference finals or the NBA finals. I don't think there's an in-between. I think he's got to play at the level of the player that they thought they were bringing in for it to make a difference, because what's not going to change is he's not going to suddenly become a really good defender. He's not. He might be more competitive defensively, but he's not going to be a good defender. But what he can do when he's at his best defense, and this applies to a lot of people in the NBA, by the way, his best defense is when he's killing you offensively.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I'll give him a lot of credit. You could tell he competed on defense last year. and it did help. I think there's a big reason why our defense, skyrocketed under Doc. Our offense fell apart, but Dame really did try last year. It didn't go great half the time because Dame, at the end of the day, he's not a defender. That's just not who he is. But overall, yeah, I think he's also gonna, just at least compete on defense, and that's all I can ask from him at this point in his career. If you can come out and show me you're at least giving effort, I'm a-okay with whatever you give me on defense as long as you're just not an absolute turnstile. And you know what? I'm gonna at 24. This one was tough for me to. I almost put him at 23 because I do believe that he still has a couple of elite years of two-way play ahead of him. I got PG-13 or a PG-8. I don't know what we're calling him now. I'm so used to calling him PG-13. I still believe in Paul George also being a top 25 player in this league. I think it's funny that a lot of kids are coming up into the league always say, yeah, I look up to Paul George as a basketball player. He's great on the defensive end. He still has great shot creation abilities. His playmaking always has left something to be desired. And maybe I'm a little too high on PG here, but I think that PG is still an absolutely phenomenal two-way player. And he showed it even in the playoffs last year when the Clippers are running out of gas. He still hit some really big shots down the stretch. He maybe hit the best three of the playoffs last year, right before they got knocked out. So at 24, I'm going to go PG Paul George because I can't call him PG-13 anymore.
If he's where you ranked him, if he's what you think he is, then the Sixers are going to be really good. Not just good. They should be in the conference finals if he's what you think he is. But if he's what I think he is, they're not going to the conference finals. They'll be pretty good. They'll have a really good regular season, and then they'll do what the Sixers tend to do, come up short in the postseason. I think Paul George has made a reputation off of the first half of his career. I think Paul George, the last 3-4 years of his career, I don't think he's been that great a defender at all. I think he's competed defensively, but not at an elite level. He's just kind of gone through the motions. I don't see it. I get why the Sixers made this gamble. If I'm right, good for your Bucks. If I'm wrong, bad for your Bucks. I'll put it that way. But I think Paul George is what he is. He's a sidekick, but he's a sidekick that's his claim to fame. I think his best claim to fame is that particular year that you mentioned, that the Clippers, and he led them there, got them to a conference finals. That's probably his biggest claim to fame. But I've never seen him as that guy because he's not that guy. He's just not that guy. He can have the nickname PG-13. I think he even went as far to go playoff P. More times than not, Paul George comes up short. Even in that series against Luka, like I gave Anthony Edwards a hard time because I was like, look, as much as people wanted to crown Anthony Edwards, he was getting schooled by Luka, who was doing it on one leg. Well, Paul George was getting schooled by the one-legged man too. I don't know. Maybe that might be a thing of the future. Be kind of out of shape and play with one leg and school everybody that's supremely more athletic than you. It seems to work. So I'm not as high on Paul George as you are, because I don't think there's an in-between for the Sixers. He's either better than what you projected and they go to the finals, or he's not what he is, what people think he is, and they go out in the first round.
Yeah, no, that's fair. PG, I think I'm banking on him having less of an offensive load with, Maxey and Embiid in there, allowing him to just exert more effort on defense. And it's Tyrese Maxey is absolutely phenomenal, and so is Embiid. So I'm thinking that, okay, maybe they can kind of share the load on offense just enough and even put a little more on Maxey's plate on that end.
You know what? It just hit me. A guy that we've not even mentioned I don't think you have Maxey on your list, right?
Oh, he's coming.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. You have Maxey coming. I have Maxey better than some guys that are in the top 20. He's certainly better than Paul George. So let's just say we disagree. I think Maxey is he's better than Paul George. If Paul George does what you said and focuses more on defense, I think that will help the Sixers because he's not their best offensive player. Their best offensive player, even though Embiid is the dude, the guy that can make shots when things go badly, the best guy, that's Maxey.
No, that's fair. I really believe in Maxey, and like I said, he's a tough. It's so tough because I actually think they complement each other perfectly. The big three in Philly. Maxey can be that tough shot maker along with Embiid, but I think Maxey can just hit you at a completely different angle than Embiid attacks, which is perfect. And Embiid and PG can really focus more on anchoring the defense. So, like I said, if I were the 76ers, I would put a lot more scoring on Maxey's plate.
Yeah.
So this one's tough, but at 25, and I put him ahead of his running mate. So we're not going to see this guy yet. I got Bam Adebayo. I think Bam takes the next step ahead. I think he becomes a better player than Jimmy Butler this year. I think Jimmy Butler will be able to have higher highs than Bam, but I think Bam's just going to be all around just a more consistent player. And I think that defensively, at this point in his career, Bam is just way better. He's also a great passer. I think the one spot where Jimmy has him beat, and I don't think that Bam will ever close the gap, is scoring and just drawing fouls. But I think even if Bam takes a decent-sized leap in the scoring department, even if he starts knocking down corner threes like he was doing at the Olympics, I think this is the perfect spot for Bam. I like Bam at 25.
Well, you kind of took a little bit of my answer out of the air because that's exactly where I was going. If this corner three thing is going to be a thing that he does in the regular season in an efficient and an effective way, yeah, Bam's going to take a leap. If Bam can knock down shots from the perimeter, it's going to expand his game because guys will step out. And I said that Anthony Davis had an advantage over big guys. Bam's even quicker than Anthony Davis. He's gonna blow by a lot of guys because they're going to have to respect that jump shot. So yeah, I have no problem with the notion that this current version of Bam, where he's going in his career, the progression, he will be the better player. He'll be the best player on the Miami Heat team. I think he will. Look, Jimmy Butler might still be the leader. He might even still be the leading scorer, but I think Bam's going to be the better player.
This next one was tough because this is where I thought about Tyrese Maxey. And honestly, I'm still on the fence with this one. Because on one hand, I'm like, Tyrese Maxey, and yes, I'm predicting the 76ers have 3 top 30 players. I think they're all going to have phenomenal years. So I'm going to be very disappointed. I think I'm going to be very disappointed if Philly doesn't make it at least to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. So here's the tough one. Sabonis or Maxey this year? I think that's tough because I feel like if Sabonis proved himself last year and he was absolutely phenomenal. But at the end of the day, I want Maxey. It's a tough one. I like Sabonis and I like what he does. So there's 26 and 27 for you. 26, I got Tyrese Maxey. 27, Domantas Sabonis.
Okay. Well, with the Maxey one, I'm going to take Maxey the way I took John Morant. I think there are a couple of players on your list that are going to make major leaps. I think John Morant's one. I think Tyrese Maxey is the other. The thing about Sabonis is this. I like Sabonis as a basketball player, but I like him as a basketball player. He's a very good complementary star. I try to envision, could Sabonis be the focal point of a team? Could he be the guy? Nope. Not a team that's going to win or go in the playoffs. He couldn't be. Could he be the best player on a bad team? He could be. here's the thing about Sabonis. I think in a lot of ways, and it's not because they're both left-handed, their skill sets are kind of similar. He's a lot like Julius Randle. He is. He doesn't play defense either. He tries, he's just not good at it. And the Sabonis that you see in the regular season, you never quite see the same guy in the postseason. He's never as good as he was in the regular season. He actually decreases what he does. He's less efficient. I don't know if that's just because it's the playoffs and teams lock in and they're a little bit more physical and they go at you more. I wouldn't rank Sabonis this high only because I just think that he's just one of those guys that I've never seen him step it up in the playoffs. He never steps it up. And so to me, like you had 26 and 27, I would have Sabonis and Julius Randle like right next to each other.
I'll say the next three I did almost put over Sabonis, and honestly, for me, I don't think it's too late to really flip the switch on this one either. I guess it's never too late, right?
No doubt.
Because at 28, I'm a big fan of this guy. Before his rookie year, I said he's going to be an MVP of the league. However, I do think that I need to see an improvement in his playmaking and at times shot selection. I'm talking Paolo Banchero at 28. I love Paolo Banchero, and I love what I saw from him last year, and I think that he was absolutely terrific in the playoffs. I think the next step in the evolution of Paolo Banchero, I need to see an upgrade in that playmaking. That needs to get boosted. And at times, I think he almost has the same like Julius Randle symptom, where he'll have a wide open like a chance at the rim, but he'll decide to stop and pop for a contested midi instead. If he can fix at least his shot selection and become a slightly better playmaker, I think Banchero has all the potential in the world to make just arguably the biggest leap on this list.
This one is easy for me because I agree with everything you said about Banchero. If he, instead of settling and letting the defense off the hook, he's more aggressive and attacks the basket more. If he spends a little bit more time in the post, I'm looking at a player who should be shooting no less than 8 to 10 free throws a game, which will up his efficiency. I think Paolo Banchero is going to take a leap as well. So I'm good where you have him, but my gut feeling is by the time the season is ended, he's also going to take a leap as well.
And that's what I'm hoping. I'm a huge Banchero guy, but I watched for the last 2 years now, and obviously he's only 2 years into his career, but it really just comes down to once he fixed those negative habits, if they can get those out of him or at least lessen them, I cannot wait to see the Orlando Magic with a better Banchero. And this guy is probably the most shocking because I'm so low on him.
That's harsh.
And I think he's a great shot maker when he's on. He definitely competes on defense, and I think he's a good defender. But he's just wildly inconsistent. I'm talking about Jamal Murray.
When you started saying what you said, I knew what you were talking about. I knew it.
I like Jamal Murray's game. I think he's a great shot creator. But once again, we're talking somebody who's just been wildly inconsistent. And that's just kind of the case throughout his entire career. Now, when he goes on an absolute heater, there's few players in the league that can touch him. That's how good he is when he starts going on a heater. We saw it in 2023. We saw it in the bubble. When he starts knocking down his shots off the dribble, he's insane. But the reality is I didn't see that in the playoffs. I saw it like twice when he hit 2-game winners over, like when he started bullying AD. I didn't see it in the Olympics. I saw it on and off in the 2023 or last season. So he could also make this ranking look bad, but at the same time, I'm comfortable with him behind all these players because I just think he's too inconsistent for me to move him up any higher.
I feel like Jamal Murray's one of those players that when his career's all said and done and time has passed, we're going to talk about, remember Jamal Murray, and he was nice, and we're going to say, I think he made like 4 or 5 all-star teams. And you're going to look up and go, he never made an all-star team? It's kind of crazy because I with the exception of last year, I thought that Jamal Murray was making his reputation off of what he did in the playoffs. I thought he established himself as a big time playoff player. And last season, he was awful in the playoffs. Yes, he made 2 big shots, and you can't discredit those, but overall, he didn't play well throughout the playoffs. And his play on both ends of the floor, I think, had as much to do with Minnesota upsetting Denver than anybody else's play. The confidence, the swagger that you normally see in a Jamal Murray, Brett, I literally thought that Ant shut him down, like shut him down physically and shut him down mentally in a way that I hadn't seen done to him before. And it seemed like if you watched him play in the Olympics, he's still not over that. So I'm with you 100% on where he's ranked. And you and I talked about the future of the Nuggets because of some of the moves they've decided to make with the concerns about the second apron. And I know I made the statement that they're going to have to make a choice between Aaron Gordon and Porter Jr. I'm going to pull that statement back. I actually think that the choice they're going to make going forward is I think they might move Jamal Murray.
Yeah, and there's plenty of teams that would take a gamble on them, and it's a worthwhile gamble, but like I said, I just want this man to find his consistency. At this point, I don't think he will. I just think this is who he is as a player. Granted, I don't think he will always be as bad as he was this past year. I think it may have just been a down year. But even if we find middle ground and I think that this is just the right spot for him. And number 30, this feels so weird to me to do. But this is also a guy who's declining. He's oft injured. I'm talking Jimmy Butler. I like Jimmy Butler. I'm a big Jimmy Butler fan, even though he torched my team for 38 in the first round. There's some players where you look at and you just think, it's time. It's almost starting to, like, he's not there yet. I think Jimmy Butler still has a couple of years of good basketball in him. But it's also starting to look, you see those moments where you go, this ain't the same Jimmy Butler that I saw even 2 years ago. And even in that 2 year ago run, he dropped 38 on the Bucks in the first round, and then his play just declined sharply after that, going round by round. And it just hasn't really gotten better. I think you can still book him for, a solid 20, 21 points, and he'll still give you 6 assists. And when he's on the court, he's going to give his all on defense. But I think this is a situation where the mind is willing, but the body is weak. I still think he's a top 30 player, but I don't really feel comfortable putting him much more higher than this.
It's funny because we just talked about Jamal Murray and how he made his name. I think Jimmy Butler did the same thing. He wasn't a highly touted draft pick. He was a dog who was on the bench and turned himself into an all-star caliber player. And I think he made his name in the playoffs. I'm with you, though. I'm looking at the future of the Heat, and I know Pat Riley is so much about culture. I don't think Jimmy's part of their future. And I think Jimmy doesn't think he's part of their future, which is why he turned down any talks of an extension. I think this is Jimmy Butler's last season as a member of the Miami Heat. And I'm not sure he even plays the whole season as a member of the Miami Heat. But I do think this, Brett, if he gets moved somewhere where he's more of a second or third option, I think that's better for him to extend his career. If he's a third option where he doesn't have to put so much on him, I think that it extends his career and he could play at a high level for another 3 or 4 years.
I agree. I think at the end of the day, I'm thinking this number one option of Jimmy Butler's on borrowed time. But as a third option, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I'm gonna make one change in my list here because I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it right on live, and I will acknowledge my mistake. I'm gonna move John Morant up to 15. I'm gonna bump Kyrie down to 19.
I thought you was gonna move Al Horford from 31 to 28 or something like that. But yeah, not just messing around. Just joking. Hey. I'm not banging on Al. I just gave Al his flowers in the first half of the show. I am a fan. I think sometimes we forget about those veteran players. Everybody doesn't have to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Some guys are just really good players who make winning plays and make their teammates better. Al Horford's one of those guys.
Yeah, I agree, and it's funny you say that because last week I made the joke, and Gene was like, "I know who your number one is," because I'd put Luka at 3, Giannis at 2, so obviously one was going to be Jokic. But he's like, "Yeah," I was like, "You're right, Gene. At number 1, got Al Horford, and then carried Jason Tatum to a title.
Right.
We'll be looking to do it again."
I love that. Yeah, look, just a really good basketball player. And I think that's what I'm going to start doing from now on with our underrated players. I'm going to look for some of those veterans who had good careers, but we just kind of like forget about, like Paul Millsap and guys like that.
No, absolutely, and that's what I enjoy doing with the underrated player segment. To me, that's what it's all about. It's those guys that are unfortunately lost in history, the AK-47s and Paul Millsap of the world.
I love it. AK-47. There you go, Brett. Bring one back. There you go.
I love AK-47. He was such a great two-way player on a unmemorable Jazz team. And to me, he's a guy that really I would have loved to see him just on a title contender because
you read my mind. I was like, imagine if AK-47 could have been on those Lakers teams, right? Like with his length and athleticism, or if he had been on one of those Bucks teams back in the day that were playoff contenders, like AK-47, he wasted his prime years on a mediocre Utah team at best.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's not the fact that he played in Utah that's unfortunate. It's really just the fact that when guys like that who are so talented play on bad teams, they just don't get the love that they deserve at times.
Agreed.
And I think that's the case with a guy like AK-47. It's funny you mentioned those Bucks teams. I was booing somebody in the chat because they're like, "Oh," I was in the Discord and they're like, "Oh, I'm rewatching this gem of a game." It's Bucks 76ers from 2001, Game 7.
Oh, is it?
Ooh.
Wait a minute. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is Ray Allen, Sam Cassell, and Big Dog, right?
Yeah, and that's why we got knocked out by AI.
Yeah.
That makes me so mad. That the one thing that bothers me about the entire series is Scott Williams getting ejected. They waited hours before the game started, then told us, "Yeah, Scott Williams, by the way, can't play in Game 7." And this is us going against a team that had Dikembe Mutombo.
I remember that.
We needed size. And, Tim Thomas tried his best, but, at the end of the day, a guy like Scott Williams, he was just tough. He brought this edge, toughness. He was going to get on the boards and help out. So he brought the perfect skill set to really combat the physicality of Philly.
Right. Let me ask you something. If they played that series again, but they played it the way the game is played today, with the spacing and the way the game is called, I say your team wins in 5 games.
Yeah.
Maybe. You know what I'm saying? I watched that series, and the stuff that Philly does to players off the ball, those are crimes out there in the real public.
Philly, in all reality, that team trying to play a modern style of basketball would have been so ugly to watch. And I think Allen Iverson would have drawn 87 free throws still. He did that entire series.
This is true. That part wouldn't change.
Once we get out of that, Dikembe Mutombo is still a great rim runner, so he still has value. But, how high are you on the Aaron McKees of the world?
George Lynch.
Yeah, Tyrone Hill.
Eric Snow. There you go.
I think McKee probably survives. He's, good enough that he's fine. But once we get past those 3, the wheels come off so quickly. I can't think of Tyrone Hill without that one clip when somebody was trying to prove that AI had shooters around him. And the first thing they mentioned, they're like, he had Hill, and everyone on the panel was like, "Did you just say Tyrone Hill?" I'm like, not the greatest example for shooting around AI right there.
He did not have shooting around him. Even though Aaron McKee was the 6th man of the year, Aaron McKee was a scorer. He wasn't a shooter. Let's not confuse that. That team was comprised of Allen Iverson and a bunch of dogs who overachieved playing defense. but none of those guys could create for themselves. They were a one-man wrecking team offensively. And when people go, hey, I was taking 27 shots a game, and I was like, well, who do you want taking shots? AI taking 27 or Tyrone Hill taking 15? You don't want that. You don't want Tyrone Hill taking jump shots. Like it was an overachieving team. Your team on skill, when you think of Cassell, Allen, and Big Dog,
we should have won that series.
You should have won. You had more talent. You had more scores. You guys should have won. The only team that made sense to me that the Sixers beat that year was the Raptors, because they were almost identical to the Sixers. It was Vince Carter and a bunch of dudes, and they played roughhouse basketball, and that's why that went to 7 games. And they still lost. So I just thought, I remember that particular series. Everybody was on the AI train. I'm a huge AI fan, but I wasn't rooting for him per se, because I'd watched him and Ray Allen go at it in the Big East, and I was a Ray Allen fan. I was rooting for the Bucks. I couldn't believe the series was going to 7. I still couldn't understand that. But again, as I watched the series progress, remember how the games were played back then. You could mug people off the ball. You could mug people off the ball, and it wasn't a foul. Philly dirtied up the series, and that's why it went to 7, and they won the game. They won the series.
Yeah, I saw. It's funny, we're talking about rings, kind of making people seem kind of like rings kind of at times being overvalued. And it can kind of help some people get overrated. I saw that right before we hopped on here, Mo. I was on TikTok, and there was a debate, and this was the worst debate ever for me. They're like, all right, who's the better basketball player, Steve Nash or Rajon Rondo? I'm like, excuse me? Like, what? Who? Like, one's like a top 10 point guard, like arguably of all time, and honestly, I would put him in there. The other, like, was like a fringe top 10, like, he was like a top 10 point guard, depending on the year at the time that he played. Like, I get it, Rondo won 2 rings, but he's somebody I think is starting to become very overrated a bit, because they'll be like, you don't know about peak Rondo. He could score. He could, like, he
said you don't know about peak Rondo.
Like, peak Rondo, he was not a scorer either. Like, he could get hot at times. I watched him hit 6 threes and like a half against Dallas and other like ridiculous stuff at times, but the man was a terrible jump shooter. Like, he could only finish around the rim, and he wasn't a great free throw shooter. Like, I don't know where we're getting this Rondo was this great two-way player, when in all reality, like, offensively, outside of his playmaking, his offense was not great when it came to putting the ball in the basket.
No, he had a couple of fluky streak games. I remember that one great series they had in the first round against Chicago that went 7 when everybody was just bombing away. I think Rondo had a couple of big scoring games, but that's not who he was overall. Look, I think Rondo, you could go down as one of he was a great overachiever. He was a great defender, but he wasn't the guy. The difficulty of being the guy is you carry the weight of the team. Rondo didn't carry that weight. KG carried that weight. Paul Pierce carried that weight. Rondo was never the guy. So I know who peak Rondo was. He played with Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett. That's who peak Rondo was. Steve Nash, he played with some talented dudes, but they weren't those dudes. Steve Nash is a 2-time MVP. Rajon Rondo, peak Rondo or not, would have never won an MVP, was never gonna win an MVP. So I think Rondo is a terrific pro who had a very good career. I don't think he's a better player than Steve Nash.
Yeah, that one threw me off. Yeah, that to me, and I'm still gonna make a TikTok on that one later. Spoiler alert. But
you should.
Yeah, no, that's all I had for today, Mo. You got anything else you want to add, sir?
No, like I said, I think your lists are strong. I think we only disagreed on like 1 or 2 dudes. I think we did agree that probably 3, maybe 4 tops are going to make leaps, right?
Yeah.
I think Maxey, I think Morant, I forgot who the other person is, but I think there's 3 guys that are going to make leaps because they're going to take steps. We talked about what Paolo can do. if Paolo makes those slight adjustments in his game, he's going to take a leap. So, yeah, I think it's a strong list. You're never going to get anything perfect, but you also pointed out the list is fluid. It's going to evolve, right, over the course of the season, and that's the funnest part. So I think my guy Brett put together a strong list. Everybody out there that's listening to us, if you agree or disagree, just let us know in the comments or let us know in the Discord. Let us know on the Facebook page because he's going to put it down. But as far as I'm concerned, great show, great list.
Yeah, no, for sure. Appreciate it. For anybody wanting more Wire to Wire Podcast Network, you can check out our guy Mo morning show tomorrow, 8 a.m. Central time.
My bad, Brett. Hold up. Sorry, folks. We're actually not doing a morning show tomorrow. Chris has got some things we got to do too. So we're going on, let's call it an extended Labor Day weekend. We'll be back, but we'll be back Monday, I believe.
Okay, don't listen to me. Check them out on Monday, 8 a.m. Central. 8 a.m. Central. And then, yeah, let's say we'll see you next Thursday for the 26th episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you for tuning in to the And One podcast. If you like our content, you can find more on the Wire to Wire Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Want more And One? Find it on Wire to Wire. Like and share our Facebook page and join the And One Discord. Grab the link to join from our Facebook. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful day.